to know you.
My name is Martin Kalima.
Now I know you. Okay. What are you presenting?
So we are analyzing the malaria data set. And what we have done so far is that basically we are still on the data pre-processing and preparation phase. So as you can see.
Now, what are your objectives?
Objectives, first of all, is find out the geographical distribution of malaria in Africa. And the second, we need to find out the effectiveness of different policies to prevent malaria prevention and control in different countries. Third, I think we need to find out how different factors such as sanitation services and drinking water services affect malaria in different countries.
So, but you haven't implemented any of them.
No.
Go work on them. No, preparation is a must. You have to do it. You cannot go to the objectives without preparation.
We came here with one major question.
Okay.
So yesterday I sent you an email on how, remember we obtained data from another website, World Bank Open Data Source, yeah. So most of this data in this data set was obtained from that source.
Not that the data we have put inside is obtained from the other side. We are looking at our data set and we are looking at the way of editing the missing data we have. So we are comparing what we have and an external source that is related to what we are doing.
For some of the columns, the values are the same. But then for other columns, they are not the same. So we're trying to get your guidance on what we should do.
You see, my guidance is simple. When you're analyzing this data, you're analyzing the data as is. Okay? The only option which I thought about the external data set, since you work with malaria, you maybe want to deal with heat maps or using the mapping. You use the coordinate where it's okay to pick, because the standard coordinates can help you get the map of Africa. That is the only set of category of data that I was expecting that you want to use. When you're cleaning this data, clean it as when you're doing the pre-processing. Clean it as is. Now you first show me the pre-processing. If you're having now problems with the pre-processing, it is supposed to be easy.
Because when we basically looked at the data, we looked at, because we had very many, we first calculated, we first know the percentage of null values. We got to know that most sections had a very big percentage of null. On comparing different columns, we realized that there is a ratio that can help us calculate and fill in some spaces. Okay? So we managed to come up with an algorithm that can help us fill that space. So on filling, then we realize that there are some we can't fill up.
So these are just
now what you do, first go look at the columns that you want to analyze. Basically, because you already know the shape of the data, you have seen the kind of data you have. Okay? Then when you're doing pre-processing, try to focus so much on the columns that contain adequate data. The one that do not contain adequate data, you explain the objectives that we have picked this column because of this, and this is what we did. You can only first do pre-processing or fill in the data on the one which are very few, because you calculate here. Okay? Yeah. Looking the sum of null values, so you know which column. So you deal with those ones. Then you derive your objectives from there.
So my question is, when we are basically filling up the data, we are not supposed to use any external source.
No, that doesn't make sense. You're modifying the data and you're changing the meaning of the data.
So that means if, according to our objective, we should choose the specific columns that we're going to use in order to achieve our objective.
Yes.
Okay. So we are going to
but don't import data to just fit in there. You're modifying the data. Because if you remember we talked about data cleaning. You know how to deal with actually null values. I explained it on my other video online. So
my question was, because
you cannot import some external data in a null value and then you see, hey, maybe I got the data, maybe this data was related, and then I pick that value and put it here. The impact, the consequences of bringing an external data
that came into our
changes.
mind was one. When you look, if it is
No, you don't compare. When you're given a data set, look at the data set the way it is, as is. Then use your knowledge of data pre-processing or preparation to work with the data as is. The only part which you can implement, which is by standard, maybe if you're dealing with maps, you can use coordinates. They are the same because it draws the map using the coordinates. That one doesn't. That one is okay. But again, bringing some data because this cell here was empty and you want to put in maybe like 50, you change the data, and that way what you're representing is not going to make sense because you're making sense out of your data.
Another question is, there are rows, columns that have over 50% of the data missing, and most of their values cannot be obtained using already existing data, right? So I was wondering, you talked about mean imputation. So, and we also noticed that there are trends in that data. If you are to group all the rows for a particular country, you'll actually notice that there are trends. So does it mean imputation affect the trends?
The manual computation affects
Mean imputation.
Mean is a tricky thing.
So that's why we need to do that, because we saw that there are particular trends
No,
in the data. And that's where our idea.
okay, you use mean, but explain why you use mean,
because if we are to show you,
and then you explain why you have used mean for putting in those
Okay,
data.
let me just show you an example. This is an algorithm that fills in those values. So, okay, before this, right? Before this, we're using other columns to calculate these values, right? So we created this algorithm that calculates those values and inserts them, right? So basically, you can see that there is a trend from 2007 to 2006 to 16. There is a trend that a percentage of the rural population has been decreased. So considering mean imputation, personally, I thought it would affect this trend. That's why we went on and used a regression imputation. We just made a regression model that can predict this final value based on these values.
Okay.
That's what we did. And then we created those two regression models.
No, that is okay if you've done the prediction. So when you have that value, now just scroll.
Going back up.
So which column was that?
So here we calculated these values, right, using the equation, because they are equations that relate the columns.
Now, since you have rural and urban, then maybe your objectives should also look at the malaria infection in urban areas.
rural areas, the trends of now increases, how it decreases. We can also bring out that we are that.
Yeah, you could have that into your objectives. Because the thing is, you don't have the objectives.
Now, also when you ask this question, provided this data that was missing, it was only one country. You need to know about that country and you work on it.
You see, if it was one country without data, and I've dropped only one country, I'll explain. I said we found out this country without data. So the reason why we dropped it, it doesn't have data. So this data we have analyzed basically this country. But when you drop a country, you know the implication. Okay? You've removed the country from the list.
So your research in that country, like,
So what he's saying is that for every action we do, there must be a reason as to why.
Yeah. So first come up with the objective. You could create a Zoom link with me and I look at your objectives. Because that's the only problem that will help analyze the data. Okay? Because at least most people came with the objectives and the work were coordinated. So first come up with the objectives. Maybe you can pick them from what you have tried and it has worked. Okay? Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much.